we're back again. We were in Kendal yesterday. I'm going to pass over to my our guest for today to explain where they are and tell us something about that. Hanna, over to you.
Yeah, we are in Leiden in the Netherlands, quite close to the coast. And it's a rather grey and rainy day, like all the winters in the Netherlands. Yeah.
And what do you do?
I'm an assistant professor of public administration. So I teach and I do research on care and welfare provision mainly, and questions of inclusion and diversity in that context.
Oh, okay. Ignas, our resident pirate.
Yeah, so I would like to know, where did you first encounter theories of practice?
As a bachelor student, I was handed Louis Bacon's Body and Soul on boxing. And I think that was my first encounter with practice theory, though I did not know yet, I think, that it was a theory of practice necessarily. But I really liked the idea that it took embodiedness and doing things as much into account as the discursive constructions. And later during my PhD supervisor was herself dipping her toes into practice theory. And so then I read the work of Elizabeth. And yeah, continue to dive into practice theories and use it more consciously in my own work.
Thanks. And even though you touched upon it briefly, I would like to hear a bit more about what attracted you to theories of practice.
Yeah, so I think when I was doing my bachelor degree, there was quite a lot of emphasis on discourse. And actually in my current field as well, when you look at diversity and inclusion, there's a lot of emphasis on what professionals, practitioners say. And sometimes I feel that it's done in a very critical way, which lacks attention to what they are doing. And sometimes they are actually doing rather positive things, only they use the wrong language. So I have a sort of a strong conviction that we should look more at what people are doing next to what they're saying, because sometimes doing things differently might precede saying things differently, even though we tend to think it's the other way around. And I think for me, practice theory is the perfect approach to do that, and to also take seriously what is happening in all sorts of places and what the potential of doing things differently somewhere can have for the large issues that we all are I am interested in, like social inequality or discrimination and racism.
Excellent. And as a modern day pirate, you might have already known that I'm very much into open anything and open science as well. And in the spirit of open anything, I would like to hear openly, what ideas are you working on currently?
I think thinking of landscapes of practices. So taking these ideas of nexus of practices, but trying to think anchoring it spatially and temporally, and thinking about the sort of spatial relations and also temporal relational histories of practice when we think about larger nexuses. Like in my case, that can be, of course, the welfare state, right, which is a massive nexus, and then zooming in and out on that. I'm also pondering the idea about the body as a site of practice. The idea that, for example, if you're a care worker and you're a migrant yourself, that you're bringing with you a lot of practices around care and how you do care with you, but often you're also encountering other ways of practices of care which are more formal. And I'm trying to think, okay, so what those collide then also in the person, and what kind of, is that a site of practice perhaps? So what is happening there, and what kind of potential for innovation is there? So that's something I'm pondering about, if there's something to that idea at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to come in. I'm the anthropologist, so I'm interested in tribes. So you mentioned that you're part of a world of administration and public policy, and I'm wondering what ideas of practice beyond just doing instead of discourse are really catching light in the field that you're working in.
I am a disciplinary migrant myself, and don't necessarily like to be part of a disciplinary tribe. So I am in public administration because I'm interested in welfare states, and not necessarily because I'm a public administration scholar. I think there is attention to like the idea that people are doing policy. So sort of street level bureaucracy ideas. I think that connects well with practices. I think Henk or Henrik Wagner has done some work on practice theory and public administration. Also Liane Visser, she's also in Leiden University, has done work on that. But yeah, there is not so much space in public administration for these kind of ethnographic approaches. So I guess that's my new mission as a recently become public administration scholars, to bring some theory of practice to and flat ontologies to our discipline.
So do you feel you're on your own in this venture?
Yeah, perhaps disciplinary, but there are many people in our faculty actually who works on theories of practice. And I think I see myself as an interdisciplinary scholar, and then you're always alone but always together. I think there's so many nice
That's
spaces.
a great way of putting it.
Like the practice theory gathering, like I think I've always found places where there is community working on my kind of topics. So
no, I think we are building a world of practice theory people that others can join. I think that's definitely happening. Before we move on to the next question, I want to go back a bit to the welfare state and your ideas about connections between practices. So what is the welfare state from a practice theoretical point of view?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I did my doctoral thesis, I started with sites of connections. Then I started with welfare provision and went from there to try to trace connections from daycare provision, daycare centers, which are very simple. You just try to provide structure in older people's lives, and then thinking, okay, but who is giving indications for people to go here, who is contracting this care? So I guess the welfare state is always unruly, right? But I think actually that's why it's so helpful with practice theory, because then you can kind of trace interconnected practices and think about how some are ordering others, how they are nested into.
Okay. So you go beyond the doing in the immediacy and thinking about these other connections as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think otherwise you're also not grasping it. That can also be a critique from me on research on care, that they just focus on the providing care and don't really think about the institutional organizational nexus which those care practices are embedded in, which delimit what one care professional can do.
Great. Okay, we'll move on now. So who else on the map would you like us to visit? Who do you want to learn more about? Yeah,
so I had a look on the map, and I realized that in my old hometown, close to where my parents live in Västerås, there is a practice theorist doing research on care and aging and technology, Michaela Kotze at Mälardalen University.
Right.
So I'm very curious to hear more about her work.
Well, we'll add her to the list, which is quite long at the moment, but we'll hopefully get there in the end. So before we go, we'd like to collect a souvenir of this little visit. Do you have anything to give us on our way?
I have, as a well-integrated woman in the Netherlands, a racing bike.
Brilliant.
Recycled materials.
Recycled cycle.
Very light, great to invade once you've come to the port.
Thank you. When we arrive at a port, we can just jump on it and speed away. Thank you so much, Hanna. And I think that's the end of this little port call.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Hanna.
Ahoy.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Ahoy.